Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. We are here to talk about Tennessee's first round matchup with the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. The Vols, of course, took an early exit from the SEC tournament. Had a good season. The computers loved Tennessee. Had some great wins. Tennessee is about a 13.5-point favorite, according to the predictive computers. Those would be Ken Pomeroy, Bart Torvik, ESPN's BPI, and Jeff Sagarin. Ranges anywhere from 10.5 to 18. BPI really loves the Vols. This game will be in Orlando Thursday, 9:40 Eastern. You can see it on CBS. And again, Tennessee, by the predictives, has got an 88% chance to win. Blake, let's be honest. I think Tennessee fans are down on that team. Didn't quite have the season that Tennessee expected. But let's be honest, the Vols also had a lot of injuries this year. And I guess the question is, you had some addition, you had some subtraction at the end of the year. Zakai Ziegler, who I think is the heart and soul of that team, is hurt and done for the year. But also Tennessee got back Josiah Jordan-James and Julian Phillips. I think that gets a little bit lost at times. But at the same time, boy, it doesn't quite have the same personality without Zakai Ziegler.
No, they're not the same team, and I think you just have to adjust your expectations accordingly. And I don't mean that to say Tennessee can't win a couple games and get to the Sweet 16, because I think when you look at their path, it's certainly possible. It's just they have to approach things differently on both sides of the floor, really, because he's your starting point guard on offense. You have to change things around a little bit because obviously Mashak's come in and played more. Vescovi can handle the ball, we know that, but on defense, he does kind of spearhead one of the best defensive teams in the country. And so when you remove that element, that does put more pressure on the other guys because again, that forces guys like Mashak, like Tyreek Key, guys like that to continue to step their game up, on that side of the floor too. And so yeah, it's just different. And I think you kind of know that going into this matchup. And it is an interesting matchup because, when you get in these 4-13 type games, if you're going to look at the 13 seed as a possible upset pick, I think Louisiana has some of those elements of teams you would look at. They have a star player that can put up points and do a lot of good things. I mean, a former, power conference guy. Of course, Jordan Brown was at Nevada, and then he was at Arizona, and now he's at Louisiana doing his thing. And so I think that's a nice, thing to have if you're trying to pull off an upset. But at the same time, I don't know if we should go too far in the direction of, Tennessee just not being able to win this kind of game, because I think when you just look at the matchup, there's certainly a lot of things Tennessee can do here to really frustrate Louisiana. So,
yeah, defense is where Tennessee's bread is buttered. I don't know if you noticed, Tennessee finally fell out of the number one adjusted defensive
I saw that.
efficiency rankings to UCLA. Tennessee, I thought, had locked that spot down, but slipped a little bit in recent weeks. The Missouri game in Nashville that we saw probably hurt that. But look, the Vols don't really have a superstar. But what they have are a lot of good players. Santiago Vescovi, we had him on our first team, All-SEC team. I think that was very deserved. Josiah Jordan-James, again, just really versatile, good player. Tyreek Key was a big-time scorer at Indiana State who had to step up his game a little bit. When Ziegler got hurt, I know they're not the same guy, but he got a little bit more playing time. Julian Phillips was a McDonald's All-American. Olivier Kamwa, one of my favorite players in the league, just very underrated kid who does a lot of stuff well. Okay, I get Tennessee was not playing its best ball at season's end. It was erratic. The offense got stagnant at times. But this is still a team that can win a few games just based on what it can do on the defensive end and just the number of players it can throw at you. It's got 8 or 9 really good players in its rotation. Again, not a superstar, although Vescovi's a really good player, but there's still plenty of parts here for Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, they've got options. I don't think we should. Yeah, we shouldn't ignore that because this is a team that has plenty um, of pieces at its disposal, and I think you just look at how Tennessee will approach this game, and I think this is what's going to be interesting to me is, like we said, you do have Jordan Brown on the other side, but look at the size, right, that Tennessee sports.
Mhm.
And I think you can mix and match a lot of those different guys, whether it's Kamwa, whether it's, what Julian Phillips can do, Plastics court 7-1, Jonas Adu 6'11. Owaka can give him some minutes. So I think you have to sort of keep that. I mean, Josiah Jordan James, we feel like can guard anybody, right? Like he's what 6'6", but you feel like you can plug him in any spot. And so I think we can't ignore that. Like the Ziegler thing is big, but Tennessee still has size. And I think in this kind of game, knowing what you're going up against, a 6'11" star player on the other side, Tennessee's going to have, some of that to be able to use because really what if you look at the lineup for Louisiana as a whole? I mean, they're going to basically play a couple 6'1" guys. Like I said, 6'11" Jordan Brown, 6'3", 6'7", that kind of range. Like that's the kind of what you're going to see from a size standpoint. So I think the physicality of Tennessee, um, you know, given what they're going to put out there, I think is something that will, could play a key role, especially when they have those lineups out there, whether it's either James and Kamwa paired with, Plastics or Adu. That's a physical, big type lineup, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, kind of how Tennessee rotates guys in and out, and what they have to do, especially again on the defensive end against Jordan Brown. So I don't, it's one of those matchups. Like I'm not saying that this. I know we'll get into our pick in a second, but like I'm not saying that Louisiana can't pull the upset here because again, I think they have the elements. Just having a player like that can lead you to those kind of big games. But when I go back and look at and kind of study it, um, it's hard to know because who, Chris? Louisiana played Texas, Drake. Um, outside of that, right? You just don't have a lot of. Southern Miss, I know, but like, there's not a lot of other things you can lean on and kind of draw comparisons to really have a great read on how they will fare against a team like Tennessee. So that makes it harder for me when you kind of try to figure out this matchup.
Yeah, it lost to Drake by 12 points. It lost to Texas by 28. Now, look, those games were in 2022, so I get that a lot can happen between then and now. Lost to Southern Miss, which was, kind of a 13 seed caliber team. Had it won its conference tournament, lost that one by 11 points. Lost one to James Madison late. James Madison, probably not quite an NIT caliber team. But, yeah, there's not a lot of things to extrapolate from this. Now, one thing – Jordan Brown was a McDonald's All-American. He's been a couple places. Kid who averaged 15.3 points, 8.6 boards. So there is a guy that's one thing that you look for. Do they have an elite talent who can maybe carry you for a game or two? Yeah, there's that. But, not a team that was an elite team by any measure. I'm looking across KenPom. It was a solid team, but not a great team. Shot 70% from the line, 35% from three. That's nice, but it's not a particularly experienced team. It was 171 in KenPom's experience. That's about average. Tennessee's a big team. You and I were at the SEC tournament, and you get access behind the scenes, and you get to walk past the locker rooms and just see kids and how big they are. Tennessee's a huge team, Blake. That's one thing that really struck me is when you're there and you see them in person, how big that team is. I see a good team. I just don't see anything here that suggests that Louisiana can upset Tennessee. And I think where that comes from is just, I don't know, maybe Tennessee fans being down on Rick Barnes, some missed expectations, but it's not like the Vols had a bad season by any stretch.
No, and they're so good defensively. I can see them putting themselves in a position to get Jordan Brown in foul trouble too, whether it's trying to take a couple charges. Tennessee, I think, is pretty good at that in terms of having their guys in position, on the defensive end. So can you get a couple of those fouls, right? I think that's going to be crucial. And also, this is a team in Tennessee that, while they can shoot the ball, I think you're going to see them as well, try to get some guys involved in terms of, maybe trying to get a couple more attacks at the rim and, going right at them, because I think that's what we have to remember, right? If you're looking for margin of error, I'm not saying Louisiana doesn't have some other guys, right? Like Greg Williams is averaging 13 points a game. Terrence Lewis is averaging 11. Fulks is averaging 9.5 basically. But if you remove the Jordan Brown element, like if he's not on the floor for how many minutes has he played this season, Chris? Like he's averaging around 32 minutes a game, and we can say this, right? But this is what we have to do. We could say this about any player in a big spot on any team, but if Tennessee were to get Jordan Brown in foul trouble, think about how completely that changes the game on that side. And so I think a team like that in Tennessee that kind of does so well in terms of, its defensive rotations and puts itself in a position to get those, to draw offensive fouls, those kind of things. I think it's always important to keep in mind in these kind of one game and go home scenarios, because that's where, just look at the makeup here. And yeah, I mean, I just I don't know that Louisiana's seen a defensive team like this, right? And we could say that about a lot of teams. And so I just feel like I have more confidence in that for Tennessee, leaning on the defensive side. Yes, it's your guess as good as mine when it comes to what Tennessee could do offensively here. But I think on the defensive side of the floor, if they can control this game just with their defense, and make this a lower scoring type game, limit the opportunities of Jordan Brown. Again, I have no doubt that Rick Barnes and his staff will have a game plan in place to, basically do what they have to do against him. And like we said, just see what else you get elsewhere. Because let's think about this too in terms of how Tennessee's going to guard here. Um, in terms of a shooting aspect, let's say you're doubling down on Jordan Brown, or really trying to take away some of the things he can do. I don't know, Chris, you tell me. When you look at just kind of the lineup here, not a lot of just knockdown great shooters for Louisiana. So, if you're doing that, you're going to probably more allow them to kick out and try to beat you from outside. I mean, Williams, I guess, is the leader in terms of most threes. He's made 63s. He's shooting, what about? I mean, he's shooting 40%. So that's not anything to scoff at. But beyond that, right? I mean, Garnett, I guess, has hit 55. So I don't know. Like, I'm very just curious to see how Tennessee approaches this defensively and how they try to combat Jordan Brown here. And then, can they take advantage of any kick out opportunities to some of those guys that can shoot? Although I don't think that's really, the thing that you're just zoning in on right there. So,
Yeah, I think I had some wrong stats earlier. Let me correct those a little bit. Brown averaged, what was it, 8.7 rebounds, 19.4 points. They did shoot almost 38% from three. Garnett was a 42% three-point shooter after shooting almost 48% a year ago. So, look, there are some guys on this team that can play and had some good seasons. But, look, it's not – we've seen what Tennessee has done to teams, how it's just taken teams out of its offense. It scored what? It allowed 50 points or less, I think 14 times. I just look at what Louisiana's done, who it's played. It's not the same team. I mean, what they'll face and what Louisiana faced is not what it's going to face in the Vols.
here's the number I was looking for. Louisiana's 293rd nationally in 3-point attempts per game. So that's kind of my point, is they haven't had to take a lot of them. Yes, they've been efficient when they have, and that's something to keep in mind. But I'm curious to see, what that number looks like against Tennessee, knowing probably how they're going to defend and try to, defend Jordan Brown. I'm curious to see what that 3-point number winds up being, because again, even on a low, shooting amount, they've been efficient doing it. So can they, knowing probably how Tennessee is going to approach this thing, could they get more of those looks, and could they hit more of those looks? Certainly possible. So, yeah, I'm curious with that regard, but I'm kind of with you. I'm going to pick Tennessee here just because I think that I understand it's easy to be pessimistic about the Vols, and everybody will bring up the Rick Barnes stuff, and I get it. But even without Ziegler, which they're a different team, I still think that this doesn't seem like the worst matchup in the world for Tennessee. Now, I say that always in the back of my mind, knowing that they are offense laying an egg away from getting beat by, 10 to anybody. And so that's always the hesitation you have with Tennessee. So,
yeah, take the Vols to advance in this one. Sleep well on it. I don't see an upset here.
It's March. I never go too far in the opposite direction, but I probably don't hate this matchup as much as some seem to with Tennessee. So,
all right, he's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. We're going to preview every single SEC team from the tournament. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.